Hottie, usually you and I get our episodes posted as soon as we make them, but here's a little secret, a little behind the curtain moment. We're recording this episode a couple of weeks before we release it because I am heading out of town as soon as we finish recording, and I have no idea where I'm going, whether there is internet or whether I'm going to be able to record for the next couple of weeks.
Well, I think I have a little bit of an idea here. You've got 2 solid weeks of fun lined up in Colorado, isn't that right?
I do. I am going up. I got a cabin rented in Breckenridge. We've got 2 weeks worth of food in the truck, and we are heading off the grid. If we may have internet, maybe we'll record something. Who knows? But you know that in addition to all the food and 2 mountain bikes and a road bike and a couple of helmets and all of my bike clothes and all of my bike shoes and a couple pair of hiking shoes and a pair of trekking poles multiplied by 2, because of course Lisa's coming as well. I've got something else. You know what that is?
Hand sanitizer, a mask, and some soap, I hope?
Yes, all of those. And a million more things, including a brand new jar of full spectrum warming balm from our sponsor, Floyd's of Leadville. Hottie, this is a big vacation with a big ride or a big hike every single day, and I need to take care of myself. I'm going to be using the warming balm on my quads, hams, calves, knees, and Achilles before every single ride or hike, because that has really been working for me leading up to this big trip.
Yeah, you got to take care of yourself. Are you using anything after?
Every single time. I am going to be using 2 scoops of Floyd's recovery mix. Last episode, I talked about the recipe that I have been using. I found that by bookending my workouts with Floyd's of Leadville products, I've really reduced the amount of soreness and inflammation I'm experiencing after big rides, and even more so after big hikes. With 4 14ers on the schedule during this trip, that is a big deal.
We are real believers in Floyd's of Leadville, and our listeners can try what we're using at a good price. Head on over to floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on all your purchases.
Yeah, and while you're there, also be sure to check out the giveaways and sales they've got going on right now. You can get some stuff for free and for cheap.
Thanks, Floyd's of Leadville, for sponsoring this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is Season 3, Episode 16 of the show that breaks down, builds you up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I'm Eldon Nelson, but I don't even know why I say that. Everyone calls me Fatty. Please do that. So this is the 3rd in our series on owning it, the dumbest mistakes we've made in a race or in a long training event. And today we are featuring Yuri, Ali, and Fatty, as in YURI HAUSWALD, ALISON TETRICK, and me. Plus, we have a few more listener-submitted mistakes that we're going to read and analyze and give our prognoses.
Right, Fatty. And it's worth mentioning that if you haven't listened to the first 2 episodes in this series, you should go back in your feed and find them. The order isn't important, but they're all worth listening to.
Yeah, I got to say, some of these are my favorite shows we have ever done.
Yeah, but let's first talk about something that has come up in one of our Slack chats. And if you haven't joined us at our workspace, go over to leadville100podcast.com, and you'll see a link right at the top to the Slack page. This particular topic pertains to a very popular way to compete right now, and that is climbing challenges. Whether that be Everesting or the Leadville Race Series 100K, many of us are more interested in feet or meters climbed rather than miles or kilometers traveled. And accurately tracking data as far as climbing is concerned can be tricky.
Yeah, brutally tricky. And now with the Leadville 100,000 foot challenge, riders are on the honor system. You just simply report what you think you climbed, what your GPS says you did. And meanwhile, Everesting requires considerably more precision because especially if you're like Lachlan Morton or Phil Guyman, and you're going for a record, something official that you can say, hey, I'm the champ. we've seen a couple of recent records rejected, and I'm talking about Lachlan Morton's in particular, because his climbing data overestimated by just a couple of meters per lap what he actually did, and that adds up over 42 laps. Lachlan, of course, rectified it by going out and doing another attempt 1 week, I mean, literally 7 days later, and successfully blowing away the record. But whether you're on the honor system, like with a Leadville 100,000-foot challenge, or not, having accurate climbing numbers, especially in real time, really helps keep you focused and keeps your morale from dropping through the floor as you're attempting to set your goal.
Hey, here's the problem with tracking elevation game. There are two main methods of collecting data, and both have their pitfalls. GPS relies on satellites that may or may not have a clear picture of the surface of the Earth where you are riding. You know, trees, mountains, tunnels, they all get in the way of those satellites thousands of miles in the sky. The other is barometric pressure sensors, which can be very accurate, provided they are calibrated and the weather doesn't change too much, and the sensor is unobstructed. Now, I reached out to Garmin on the topic of accuracy and climbing, and here's what they suggested. They said, we recommend that customers use the set elevation feature that is on their device at the base of a climb to ensure there's a good point of reference established. Now, here are some other suggestions we've read or heard about. If your climb has been surveyed, try to get your hands on topographical maps. At least then you will know with certainty what kind of numbers you should be seeing on your head unit. Another thing to do beforehand is to create a Strava route. The data in Strava segments are only as good as the head unit used by the person who created that segment. And we've already heard about the pitfalls there. But by creating a route, Strava pulls from other data sources to determine stats, including elevation. Finally, double up on your recording. If your climbing event is that important to run, to you that is, then run 2 bike computers or run your bike computer and an elevation tracking app on your phone.
Oh man, this just became really complex, Hadi. It's good advice though. And if your GPS is just giving you really bad elevation numbers, and I'm raising my own hand here, check your device and check your mount. If something's obstructing the little barometric pressure sensor hole, which is just the size of a pinprick, if something it can gum up that whole works. Unfortunately, since some of us have the audacity to sweat onto our devices or to drink energy drinks while we are riding near our devices, and those splash or drip onto those devices, it's super easy to plug up that hole. Our friend Ray Maker, we had him on the show recently. He advised me. I was begging him for help over Twitter. And he said, soak that little hole in hot water or gently scrub it with a soft toothbrush, and that might help. Personally, that did not help me. My Garmin 530 now underreports all of my ride elevation by about 50 to 70%. This morning, for example, my wife and I did a ride. Her reported elevation gain was 2,000 feet. Mine was around 1,000. So I've just gotten used to hitting the elevation correction button on Strava after each ride. And meanwhile, while I'm riding, I've just removed all elevation-related fields from the display on my Garmin because they only give me bad news, and I don't want to see it.
Sometimes that's the best method. Out of sight, out of mind. Should we really be surprised that a majority of the mistakes we've heard about in this series revolve around nutrition? You got the bonk, the barf, the beef. I mean, this is a real theme.
Yeah, we could, maybe we even should, do a whole podcast just around fueling and hydration, and our title sponsor, The Feed, would definitely be a big part of that. If you identify with any of the nutrition-induced dumb mistakes you hear during this little 3-part series, please consider turning your nutrition management over to The Feed.
It's super easy. When you go to thefeed.com, you'll see a Get Help drop-down menu where you can do a chat with a coach. I gave this a try the other day and got in with Ben. I asked him what more I could do to ensure hydration during hot days with lots of sweating. After asking me what I was currently using and what my results were, he suggested 2 pre-hydration drink mixes. He gave me personal advice on those, and he sent me to a link of an article on hyperhydration. Now that's full service nutrition.
Yeah, they got so much they've got, in addition to a million products, they've got so much knowledge from the athletes and experts over there. And that's what we love about the feed. They've just got, everything you need, all the advice you need to put it into action. So you can find the perfect mix for you and the workouts that you are doing. And you can get a 15% discount just by going over to thefeed.com/Leadville. Fill out a little form. You'll start getting some email from them and you can get 15% off. Not a bad deal.
All right, this is part 3 of our Owning It series, the dumbest mistakes we've made during a race or a long training ride. Now, we have 2 interviews this show, Yuri Hauswald and ALISON TETRICK. Both of these pros talk about a career-defining race that is now dealing with some significant issues. You probably heard Lifetime Fitness fired race director Jim Cummins over a social media post regarding the killing of a black man by police. Lifetime is also dealing with a name change for that race after learning that the Kaw Nation actually was not 100% on board with the name of that race in the Flint Hills of Kansas. And if you notice that I'm purposely avoiding the name of that race, well, I am.
Yeah.
Cummins has not only hurt blacks and Native Americans, but he has also put the athletes who have supported him over the years in a really tough spot. Athletes like ALISON and Yuri.
Yeah, it's worth noting that Yuri has a little bit more to say about this issue over on the Paceline podcast that just came out. By the time you see this, or you're hearing this episode, it will be a couple weeks ago. But go back and give it a listen to hear his thoughts. But what we talked with Yuri about, and we're recording this about a month ago, so there's some significant time shifting here, Hadi. But we talked about stupid mistakes that Yuri's made. And Hadi, I got to say that as we were planning this Owning It series, I was a little bit nervous about asking pros to tell us stupid things that they have done because, they're pros. They are, their whole thing is being better and smarter and faster than the rest of us. But, every single one of them were really good about it. And the one pro I knew that would be fantastic at this and would be honest and completely, 100% open about it is Yuri Hauswald. He is truly one of the most genuine people I know. And when I asked him to own it, he owned it. Yuri Hauswald, tell me about something dumb that you have done on a bike.
How much time do you have, Fatty? Because I have a few for you, bro. I've been riding a bike.
I want to hear all 3.
All 3, yeah, right. I've been riding a bike a long time, so I've accumulated a few dumb mistakes over the years. So, they've ranged from, like gear mishaps a little bit to nutritional, misses or mishaps or miscues, whatever you want to call them. So in 2005, I had qualified for the 24-hour World Championships in Conyers, Georgia, and I was racing solo 24 hours. And one of the requirements for racers, and you have done some 24-hour events, I think, Fatty, or team type events like that, and you have to have, like, in some of them, a little wooden baton, right, that you either keep attached to your helmet, in your pocket, or something like that, but it always has to be on you, particularly racing solo. And if I remember correctly, they would sometimes check it. You'd had to point to it in your helmet or wherever you had it when you came through the tent. Mm-hmm. So it was transitioning into full night. And my pit crew was my mom and my wife and my dear friend, Matt Neary, Stick Boy Neary. He's like 6'4" and all of, like 140 pounds. He's the one who actually dared me to do 24-hour racing, but that's another story. So anyway, we're switching helmets and we forget to put the baton on my night helmet, right? Which had my light on my helmet. So no wooden baton.
Right.
I don't know it though. I go out on my lap. My wife finds it and freaks out and thinks like I'm going to be DQ'd or, get a time penalty or something like this. So I wasn't carrying a cell phone or anything like that, but she knew where the course came in down before the transition area. So I'm just finishing one of my early night laps, kind of in my groove. And all of a sudden, like, my wife jumps out of the side of the trail. She's like, "Yay!" the baton. And she's holding the wooden, and I was like, oh shit, and just like no one around, just grabbed it out of her hand and put it in my pocket. I was like, thanks, sweetie, and then she went booking off into the darkness. And I wove my way and rode into the, check-in tent and had my wooden baton. Yeah, it was
Perfect crime.
I was just that I had no idea, obviously, so I wasn't worried, but she was mortified that we had forgotten to transfer it. That's just one of those little details, with like 24-hour racing or endurance racing, like the littlest detail, right? Or a missed piece of gear can totally mess you up.
Our families, our friends, the people who take on this thing of, yes, I will crew for you for this ridiculous undertaking. They go through so much. We do.
I think we put them through more than we actually go through, right?
1,000%. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah. I've had family lose sleep, for nights before, and a big race because, well, I mean, you've seen me the day before a race. I am such a stress monster, and I turn from day to day. I am very much a type B personality, right? Very not type A. But the week before a big race, I am like type AAA.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I put people through it before. So you got more than one story. Tell me another.
I do. So another one, and this one involves Dirty Kansas. This was 2017. So I had, the title had been relinquished in 2016 to Ted King. I did not finish that year. I had a
lot of tire problems.
I had a lot of tire problems that year that took me out at 115. So 2017, really had no expectations, wanted to do as well as possible. And the 100-mile aid station, I think I came in there just inside the top 20 or something like that, and took my bottles, but forgot to take my Camelback chase vest, and didn't realize it until I was about 10 miles down the road and was like in this bit of like hydration quandary, like, what do I do? And it was hot and windy. What do I do? I have had heat stroke 2 or 3 times, and am really susceptible to it, particularly in the Kansas heat and humidity and wind and all of that. And I had to go basically like 65 miles. They had an odd aid station that was coming up in between, because it was the 100. So, they sort of split the difference, but it wasn't an even distance. It was like more like 65. And I just made the calculation in my head that 2 bottles, and hopefully there were going to be some driveway ferries, people down there with their coolers that sometimes happen out there in Dirty Kansas. Folks on their farms come down and set up in their driveways. And I remember somebody was down in their driveway, and they had the Midwest variation of Dr. Pepper. It's like Mr. Brown's or something like that. And I was down to like my last sips on my 2 bottles, and that drink tasted so good, and it helped get me like the last 15 miles to the aid station. But that was a massive mistake that, could have cost me finishing for sure with dehydration, forgetting your hydration pack, which has food in it and 50 ounces of water and probably a spare tube and all of that. And it's like, dude, how did you leave the aid station? This is your 4th or 5th Dirty Kansas. Like, how did you leave the aid station without putting on a new vest? Because I had one on when I went in, but I didn't put one on when I went out. So
we race stupid. I mean, it's that simple, right? We just race stupid.
Yeah. And then the other one actually involved 24-hour racing. I think this was like 2007. And I'm not going to bag on any nutritional products because I work for a nutritional company. But it was a nutritional product that set my stomach off that I shouldn't have eaten in that particular weather. And I found myself, hurling on the side of the trail, and ended up, pulling, about only 12 hours out of a 24-hour event, and had to pull out because of like a poor nutritional choice.
I'm tempted to guess, but I'm not going to.
We won't. Yeah, we don't want to ruin anything.
Yeah, no, we're not, like you say, we're not here to trash anyone. But
No.
I too have pulled over to the side of the road, actually in the Leadville 100, a mile before the power line climb, and just barfed my guts out. And it's you make some dumb decisions in the heat of the moment, and you pay for them down the road.
Yeah, and I would say just one other guiding principle before any large event: never ever mess with your bike. Right, like the night before, don't be tinkering with your saddle. Don't, you know what I mean? Just like,
yes.
You've probably got it all dialed in and ready to go. Don't F with it. Just leave it be.
Step away from the bicycle.
Step away from the bicycle. And that's actually, I'm not going to name names in that, but that comes from a stage race experience with somebody who just couldn't help themselves and always had to F with their bike, and it didn't work out.
Oh, come on, name names. I want you to name names for this one.
No, I will not do that. Oh, so those are my mistakes, Fatty. And, I probably make mistakes all the time, like we all do.
We all make mistakes, but man, they make for good stories. Thanks so much for telling us some.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Oh, I love him, Fatty. Mr. Honest for sure. But for me, when I think of Yuri Hauswald and racing, I always think about what was probably his biggest win, and that was the 2015, what I'll call the Emporia 200. And yeah, we've changed the name of the race since that's probably going to happen anyhow. Yeah. Yuri won on a rainy, muddy, horrific day, and he was able to take the victory while others succumbed to the weather and equipment mistakes. In particular, while many racers were trying to ride through the mud bogs, Yuri shouldered his bike every time and ran through that mud. He did not suffer a mechanical on a torturous day for equipment. Also, in the final 50 miles, Yuri made up 22 minutes on the leader, and this 200-mile slog came down to a sprint. Now, no one works on sprints in preparation for the Emporia 200, that is. But Yuri did, and he used that training to ensure the V. That's not dumb by a long shot.
He is not a dumb racer. When he says he makes a dumb mistake, there's a lot of really smart stuff that's happening as well, right? You and I have spoken frequently about brakes on this show, but we've never really done a breakdown on brake pads. To look up this topic, we hit up our friends at Shimano for some advice.
Yeah, Shimano has a detailed outline on what types of pads there are and when and where to use them. Here it is. There are basically two types: resin, also called organic or semi-metallic, and metal, also called sintered or just metallic. You will usually find metallic pads on complete bikes because they cover all the bases.
But when it comes time to replace those pads, Shimano says to consider these factors. If you want quiet brakes and brakes with less initial bite, go with resin. Organic pads also do better in dry climates, like in Leadville in the summer.
If you ride in wet conditions and or need the quick stopping power preferred by a downhiller, then metallic pads are for you. They can make more noise, but they generally last longer and dissipate heat better. So even for Leadville and its long, fast ascents, an argument could be made for sintered pads.
Yeah, the most interesting suggestion from Shimano is one they say some of their top racers do, and that's to use both, an organic and a metallic in each caliper. In this setup, the rider gets some of the benefits of both kinds of pads. That's pretty cool.
Check out all of Shimano's brake stuff, including pads, with their signature cooling fins at bike.shimano.com.
ALISON TETRICK had big plans for this summer hottie, including her first start at the Leadville 100, following a day later by a trip around Steamboat Springs on a gravel bike. She's off the hook for that for now, but we did not let her get away quite so easily. Like all the pros who we talked with about their mistakes, ALISON was very open, honest, and something I always love about ALISON, she was hilarious. ALISON TETRICK, tell me about something dumb you have done on a bike.
Eat smoked salmon before a crit. Don't worry, it gets better. It was like the party that goes on and on and on. Yeah, try eating smoked salmon.
I think I know how this story ends.
Don't worry, I have a few for you, but two more substantial. But when the party goes on, just get ready if you eat smoked salmon before a criterium.
Okay, so let's have details on that. I've got to hear that.
I was in the yellow jersey at Nature Valley Grand Prix, and this is not my main story, by the way. So you have a couple coming. And I thought, these criteriums are, US Pro criteriums, and they start 4 or 5 p.m. So you ride in the morning, you try to take a nap, eat breakfast again, because you want to try to recreate that race experience. And there's that song that goes, the party goes on and on and on, on and on and on. And so I made a smoked salmon egg bagel. And the whole time in the crit, I'm in the yellow jersey trying to defend every sprint points. And if anyone knows me, I don't sprint. So I'm vomiting smoked salmon, trying to not lose any points. And then in my head is just the party goes on and on and on. So anyway.
Are we talking projectile vomiting? How bad is this?
There were crumbs in the back of my throat.
And so everyone got to enjoy what you had for dinner the night before.
Yeah, it was great. But I've made a lot of mistakes. That's the key to bike racing. You make a ton of mistakes before you ever get one lucky draw. Once was know your nutrition. So I did, prior to recording, we were talking about everyone Everesting. And I did an event called the Everest Challenge, which was 2 days, but it did cover the 29,000, et cetera, feet. And I didn't have support, so every other pro woman has somebody out there feeding them. And I'm just taking anything that a farmer or somebody's giving me. And it's out of Bishop, so it's kind of close to Mammoth. And you're I've climbed 6,000 feet in the first 2 hours, and then I realized I'd never climbed 6,000 feet ever in a ride. And then I still have, 8,000 feet to go that day. Wow. And so I was in very unpredicted territory. And so I grabbed, let's just say a suspect nutritional supplement that did have some protein in it. I don't want to name a brand, but I didn't, I needed something. It was hot. It's kind of hot desert. And I took it. I needed water, fluid. It just turned out to have this nutritional supplement in it. And so you get above the tree line multiple times a day. And so I'm just going to say you're climbing these mountains towards the bristlecone pines. So there's nothing, grass maybe. And my body suddenly sounds like Dumb and Dumber, right? Or what is that? I don't know if it's Dumb and Dumber or if it's Ace Ventura Pet Detective, but the toilet bowl flushes in my stomach.
Yeah, I've heard that sound before. It is not a good sign.
And I'm riding, and that never had happened to me while I was riding. So I'm riding, and I'm second place. I'm feeling great. And I look, and all of a sudden that I just heard it, a toilet bowl flushed in my stomach. And I was trying to unzip the jersey, trying to exit stage left. No one's around me. So I'm I'm fine. I'm going to get second still. I just need to get rid of whatever's going on in there. And some guy rides by me, and he looks, and there's, like I said, we're above the tree line. There is nothing covering the ground. So I'm just sitting there on the side of the road with the toilet bowl flushing. And he looks at me. I end up, regaining strength and then keep getting second place. And then 10 years later, the guy comes up to me, I swear, at Dirty Kansas 2 years ago. And he's like, don't you remember meeting me at the Everest Challenge? And I was like, nope, no recollection. Nope, don't remember you at all.
We have never met.
And
I will swear to
Eldon,
that.
though, then he actually goes a step further. He goes, no, you really do remember me. Remember the bristlecone pines? And I was like, nope, I've never seen you in my life.
Must have been someone else.
And then my more long story I actually planned to tell was the year I won Dirty Kansas, and this isn't spoken about quite frequently, but ever. For those of you that know me, I came from an extensive road background, switched to gravel racing, and then we will do Leadville eventually. But as a time trialist and a preparer, I like to know my course. So I check out the start, check out the finish. So for Dirty Kansas, you're starting with, I don't know, It's like 3,000 of your closest, not closest friends. And so I looked at the start the whole time because I'm just stressed. Like I'd never done an event that had so many people. I'm just nervous. So as a road racer, I'm looking at like the first time we get on the gravel, the first hill, the first mud section. I look at all of that. And so that's fine. I do it. I nail it. I'm like top 3 into the gnarly first corner, do the race. And being a roadie, I am, like race with the boys the first 5 hours. So under 5 hours, we do the first 100 miles on dirt. Like we're railing it. And I'm in the top 30. I'm like hanging on by a thread, by the way. But I'm just, survivor mode going in.
You were doing it.
Yeah. That was my plan. I was like, I'm going to go as hard as I can until I can't. Anyway, and then they started going harder, and I thought, well, this is not going to end well. So I should go slower now. So then, I'm 12 minutes ahead of the group behind me. The lead guys with like Ted King and stuff are in front of me, and I'm just sitting there for the next 80 miles by myself, which is totally fine. I love being by myself. Yeah. But, I start seeing things. I see stormtroopers. I see...
You're having legit hallucinations.
Oh, legit. Like I took a wrong turn, I'm like, I swear, like stormtroopers were coming and I hear the sounds. I've been by myself for far too long. And it's cool. It's just like a slow trot. And I end up actually losing that 12 minutes, and a mounted Nauman catches me with, there's some other guys and, groups, and people are starting to catch me because I have gone backwards. And I can't even, I'm like, I'm not even seeing straight. So total hallucinations, and I'm cramping. A train goes by, like everyone stops. I can't unclip from my bike because the train goes by, but if I unclip, I'll cramp. So I act like I'm cool. Like I'm doing like circles, and I'm not doing circles because I'm cool. I'm doing circles because I'm going to cramp. And so anyway, so the last 30K we ride in. Okay. So Kansas is on Dirty Kansas 200-ish miles, and they announced the course like the day before. And then I realized, Eldon, I never looked at the finish. So is it 200.3, 200.6, 206? And I'm going in and I see the silo because we're in Kansas, sorry. We're going into Emporia, Kansas. And I see the silo. So I'm like, well, surely we're at least 10 to 15K away. Allison, what's the distance of Dirty Kansas? I'm like, it's 206, 206.1, 206.2, and I never had ridden the finish. And I'm with Amanda.
So you can't sprint. You don't know the exact distance. You're truly coming into this finish blind in a way.
Yeah. And so she goes, she's won it multiple times. She's a phenomenal athlete. And she goes, and the road racer in me just goes, well, if she goes, you go, because, well, what else are you going to do? Like,
right.
Live or die right now. So I go, and I get a gap, and I'm like, I'm going to win Dirty Kansas. Awesome. I keep going, go down Emporia, go up this hill. I look back. I'm like, I'm going to win. And I'm like, why is she taking a left?
Oh, no.
Behind me. No. So she takes a left, which was the course. And meanwhile, it wasn't my GPS's fault. My GPS is just like, I use a Lesign GPS, and it's like ding, 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 ding,
sure,
ding. But I am literally 11 and a half hours into an event. I am not seeing straight. And I go up, I look, and flip it, have to go back, and I have to catch her in the finishing chute to sprint past her to win Dirty Kansas. Oh. Moral of the story, know your course. Know
your course, and pay attention to the GPS and the people saying, go that way, go.
People were so confused. Like I blew like a red light. Like I don't know where I was.
That is a great big mistake, and with a happy ending for you. That is awesome. Allison, those are great mistakes. Thanks so much for telling them to us.
You're welcome. Sorry, I'm embarrassed now.
Wow, smoked salmon before a crit, hand-ups from strangers, seeing stormtroopers going off course with the finish line in sight. Wow, Allison. Yeah, this was my favorite entry of the pros, Fatty. This is what we mean by owning it.
Oh, she does. She is so awesome. Allison is just great. And I cannot wait till next year when we get her Leadville 100 story. It's yet another reason to be excited for the Leadville 2021 race. Okay, Hadi, we're at the DNA promo spot, and I have something I am so excited to talk about. And honestly, I can't figure out why I let us get 15 episodes into the season before I got to this.
Something about DNA's jersey design or production, maybe?
Nope, nothing like that. It's something I actually bought about a year and a half ago for Lisa for Christmas, and it has been paying me big dividends every single month since then. So Christmas 2018, I got Lisa a membership in DNA's Sock of the Month Club. Now, every single month, she automatically gets a very cool, very unique, very stylish set of cycling socks in the mail. I don't have to do anything, but I get great brownie points for $13 a month. And, she's getting a present from me. She thinks I'm great. And she loves all of these socks. She is in, 18 months, has never gotten once a pair of socks she doesn't like. These are just great. Seriously, great subscription for yourself or for some other sock fan in your life.
Oh, I love socks. I hope I can get on the fatty Christmas list one day. Sock of the Month Club. Yeah, really good idea, actually. And you can learn more at dnacycling.com. Then choose capital SOTM for Sock of the Month from the shop menu.
Oh, you're going to be so glad you did.
Fatty, it's time for you to tell your story of your big own it moment.
Okay, so as you know, before we ever started doing podcasts, I had years and years of blog posts of me basically owning my mistake. That was what fatcyclist.com was. It was me confessing to being a goofball for a decade and a half. But going through all those and thinking about what is my biggest own it moment is honestly not all that funny. It was 2009. The year I believe Lance won the Leadville 100. It is also the year I did not finish the Leadville 100. This is what had happened. So, and this is where the story does get a little bit down, but it's kind of relevant. My wife had just passed away. I don't think I've talked about it much in this blog or in this podcast, but Lisa is my second wife. My first wife passed away from cancer. And it was just weeks before the Leadville 100. I had not planned to be racing it, but I suddenly found myself with time on my hands and an entry to Leadville and decided, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to race. And it was kind of a rainy morning. And obviously it had been a bad year. And I started hard. I was riding angry and I was riding fast and riding with intensity. And actually doing surprisingly well. At least it seemed like it at the time. So in spite of the rain, I was on a single speed. I was up with the people who were well faster than sub-9 finishers. Got to the top of Carter. And, I guess that's about 10, 15 miles into the race. And it's raining pretty good and hard. And now we're on pavement. And I put my head down to keep the rain from hitting me in the face and got into a tuck because I was on a single speed and just was going good and aggressive, wanting to stay with the people who were near me and didn't pay attention. I was going harder and faster than I should have, was probably riding a little angrier than I ought to be, and didn't see a bend in the road. And off the side of Carter Road, or the road from coming down from Carter, is it called Turquoise Lake? Is that the name of the road?
Yep, Turquoise Lake Road, absolutely.
Yeah, it banks off pretty hard into trees and rocks in some places, and I've seen it 100 times since then, and I've thought, this is not a very serious bend. There was no reason I should have ever shut off, but shot off I did. I just went off the left side of the road, saw what was going to happen just before it did, grabbed a couple handfuls of brake, didn't do me any good, and later found out that my crash took me about 35 feet before I came to a stop. The reason I was able to figure that out is because my brother-in-law later that day went and found where where the skid mark was, and then where my Oakley sunglasses were laying in the dirt. So there were a couple of pretty good marks of, where I went off the road and where I wound up afterward. I was so hurt, Hottie. I was tumbling down in rocks and trees, just, chaos and pain. And I just laid there, screaming. I was just screaming my lungs out because I was hurting so bad. I was 100% certain that I had broken a hip or a femur or something. And also I was scared that nobody was going to know about this, that I had shut off the road without anybody being aware. But someone had been aware, and actually it was a local, someone that I know. And not well, but he goes to the same bike shop that I do. And he stopped for me, and he stayed with me until the panic and the fear and everything eventually subsided enough that I found out that I was banged up and hurt and had a difficult time walking, but I had not. And I didn't ever find out whether I'd broken anything. I kind of think that I might have cracked a tailbone or something, because I still have some soreness to this day, 15 years later. Or I guess 11 years later, it's been a while. Anyway, he got me back to the top. Essentially, he was on track for a sub 9, and sacrificed that in order to, take care of me. So kudos to him. But I eventually he went and notified a race official who came and got me in his truck, and that was my DNF for Leadville. So the owning it moment on that is really something that I've thought about a number of times. For a long time, I thought, well, I shouldn't have even been out there. That, I was not in a good place mentally, and I was not, I wasn't in a place where I should be with a bunch of racers. And I've kind of backed away from that thinking. I now think that it wasn't that I was at Leadville and doing the race. It's that I let my emotions overtake me during the race. I was, I was, of course, an angry person. I was, of course, very intense. I was very emotional, and I let myself hang it out too far. I was going too fast. I was not paying attention to the road, and I paid the price. And, I could have paid a much worse price. I could have paid a much higher price. I'm lucky I didn't really get any more busted up than I did. And, at the time, I was a single dad. I had little kids I was taking care of. I should not have been going out hard. So that's my own it moment and something that I'm trying to remind myself from time to time. Last weekend, I actually hung it out a little too far on a road descent and wound up getting way too far left on the road just because I was going so fast that my momentum carried me out there. But it was a good reminder and a stark reminder. We have fun on bikes, and it is tempting. It's almost a narcotic to go fast and go hard and go, dare I say, beyond our abilities. Remember that it's not worth it. Stay in your ability, have fun, and live to ride another day. So that's my own it moment. Kind of a sad one, kind of a hard one, but, a good lesson if I can remember it.
Right. Well, first of all, you get a pass. I mean, look, anyone who losing a loved one like that, but still going ahead and lining it up at a very important race, you get a pass. I'm sorry. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. You gave it a go. You tried. You obviously understand what you did wrong, which is great. I think it'd be really interesting to look at folks who have especially with pro athletes. I mean, we've seen this a lot with pro athletes. Like they all have something significant happen in their life. Two people come to mind. Brett Favre lost his father and over the weekend, and by Monday night, on Monday Night Football, he was playing as a starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. and went out and had this outstanding performance. And so somehow he was able to take this significant loss and turn it into something absolutely terrific. I think it'd be interesting to talk to people like him, or like Ben Crenshaw, who lost his longtime instructor Harvey Penick, and it was literally the week before, or the week of the Masters tournament. That is, Ben went out and won the Masters at a very late age, too, by the way. Won the Masters tournament with this, extremely heavy heart. He was able to somehow compartmentalize things and still be able to perform. It'd be interesting to talk to athletes like that and figure out, like, how do you do that? How do you put those things aside and still come up with these great performances? As far as mistakes, yeah, I think you nailed it, Fetty. I mean, getting out of your wheelhouse can be a problem for any of us. And again, you look at what other athletes say about avoiding this. They always talk about trying to stay in the moment, which in your case, very difficult to do. Obviously, you had a lot of thoughts swirling in your head, a lot of forces working, mental forces, working kind of against what you would maybe normally do. Athletes also talk about, doing, in particular, baseball hitters will say this, look for your pitch. They always think about, I'm looking for a particular pitch to hit, something I know I can deal with. And I think the same thing applies no matter, what sport you might be in, including mountain biking. I mean, look for those spots where you can be aggressive, and then in the areas where you're not quite as good, try to just make the most of those situations. I mean, the same thing can be said for people who don't climb well, like on Columbine. They don't want to attack that climb. They just want a management. You, on the other hand, know that you can attack that climb because you are a climber.
Yeah.
Conversely, when you make the turnaround at the top, you change your mindset. Maybe the guy who can't climb can now bomb, and you have to be a little bit more careful. So, but staying in the moment, it's a toughie, man, especially with a heavy heart. So you get a pass, Fatty.
And I appreciate that. I think, for years, I really did think that it was a mistake for me to have been at Leadville, and I no longer do believe that at all. I think that being at Leadville, it was actually a really good thing. I had a bunch of friends who came with me and were around me doing something that I love doing. And the mistake was that I didn't bring awareness that I had, so much anger and intensity and aggression pent up in me that I didn't control it well. And I think that, had I made it down Turquoise Lake Road, I might have turned in a fastest, a PR for my life at that time, because I had intensity and I had focus and I had a lot of anger, and that can be energy that is well channeled. But you got to control it and be aware of it so you don't do something dumb with it. And that's what I did.
Yeah, sounds like we have a future topic for this show, and that may be talking to some type of sports psychologist, because this is the thing that, a pro athlete would have access to, and that is, before these, when these events do happen in their lives, they're able to turn to somebody and say, okay, how do I channel this? How do I deal with this so I still have a good or great performance? So, hey, we hope you caught our recent Wheels episode. In it, we had a discussion with Envy VP Jake Pantone. Now, due to time constraints, we had to cut some of that discussion, like how Envy achieved savings in its new foundation series. Jake said they were able to cut layup time by 30 minutes, but still make a product that has 90% of the ride quality and performance at a price tag of almost $1,000 less.
There are still additional things you're getting out of the premium wheel line that do matter. Like that extra 10% isn't to be underestimated or undervalued in terms of what it does for the ride quality. But I mean, in terms of value per dollar, nothing beats what we're doing with the foundation. And for Envy, like I said earlier, to circle back, it's about being best in class. So best in class doesn't necessarily have to mean premium and niche. For us, it meant best in class at the price that the majority of the aftermarket is looking at.
So for now, Envy has just one MTB wheel set in the Foundation series, the AM30, which is targeted at the trail and all mountain rider. But Jake did say during our interview, in regards to a foundation cross-country focused wheel set, stay tuned. And you can bet that we will. But for now, go to Envy, and that is enve.com, to check out all of Envy's carbon wheels and components. Okay, Hadi, we are at the final part in our final episode of our Owning It series. And this is the part that I actually really always love doing, and that is looking at comments that readers and listeners sent in when we asked them what their biggest dumb mistakes were. And I want to start with one from Michael Iddings, who I always think of him because he's someone that I want to get on the show, for one thing. He's done done this race a lot of times with a bad ticker, and he's done this race the exact same number I have. So he and I are kind of contemporaries. But here's what he says about his own it moment. He says, during my best year ever for Leadville at a sub-9 pace, I was the last rider in a pace line coming across the conduit roads. Just as we got more into the 2-track portion, the leader made a wrong turn, and we all just followed, just pedaling with our heads down. Oh, I know how that feels. He says, it took me several moments to realize we were off course. By the time I verified where I was, slowed down, turned around, and backtracked, I had lost significant time. And I think you'll lose a little focus and morale too, right? He says, I will never just follow anyone in a race again. I am sure that cost me a big buckle. Oh, that is heartbreaking, Michael. I will tell you, when 2021 comes with that better ticker you got, I'm going to be looking at you for an 828. That's my guess for Michael Iddings.
Yeah, I think Leadville owes him some time, or somebody owes him some time back on the clock. Maybe he can start off with negative time one year. Just for that,
he deserves to start 15 minutes early.
Yeah, I agree. How about Lisa Hoynes-Piven? She said her biggest mistake, relying on race-provided fuel that I'd never used before. Her stomach was in knots. That recurring theme here on the Owning It episodes. Yeah, go with what you know, especially with what you're putting in your stomach. Very, very important. Now, some of us, fatty, like me, I can kind of pull up to these neutral aid stations and, have what they, put out, whether that be a strange or different hydration mix or the food they have. I do quite well with the hand ups and hand ups.
Yeah, some people do.
Yeah, but you got to know if this is not you. And I think most of us need specific foods and drink. And if they kind of work outside that box, they're asking for trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. You and I are both lucky in that we are kind of garbage disposals, I guess. We can eat anything, we can drink anything, and we do okay. So I do better with some things. And I get, sort of a taste fatigue thing with certain kinds of stuff. I do better with some things than others. But that's something that we've learned over years and years of practice. The critical thing is you don't go into Leadville or any other big, long race not really knowing what they have and what you are good for. So, Lisa, you learned an important lesson. Good luck next time so that your stomach is not in knots. Eric Guylo said, at the Firecracker 50 one year, I decided fairly at the last minute that it was a good idea to ride my fully rigid Crave 29er instead of my full suspension Stumpy. Oh, that's not a good last minute decision to make. He says, that was a very long 50 miles. I felt like a tuning fork. Oh, good description. At the end of the day, I certainly won't make a last minute decision ever again, and will probably never ride a fully rigid bike in a race longer than just a few hours ever again, especially on a true mountain course. It might sound obvious, but it was a painful lesson. Eric, I've made that same stupid mistake as you, and my wrists have never been the same. A rigid fork for a long day can really leave you beat up.
There are plenty of good reasons to bring two bikes to a race, right? Backup bike, say the week of the race, something goes wrong with your main bike, then you've got a backup bike. During the race, you might have a chance to switch a bike if the race allows it. If you break something, there's maybe conditions change. For instance, if you're a Mid-South racer, you might want to bring 2 bikes to that. One set up single speed, one not, because if it rains, you may not want the gears in that race. So there's lots of reasons to bring 2 bikes to a race, but there's almost zero to make a last-second change like that.
No.
Weather is maybe one of them, but otherwise, commit. Commit to your equipment early on, weeks, if not months in advance, and stick with that commitment. You'll be much more decisive on race day, I think, if you commit not only to food and the other things we've talked about, but to your equipment. Know that you've made the right choice going in. And I think in the case of a 50-mile, mostly single-track race, the obvious choice is full suspension.
Yeah. There's already enough to think about. Which bike you're going to ride doesn't need to be one of the decisions you're going to have. Have your B bike there, but only use it if you gotta use it. Let's go ahead and wrap up Season 3, Episode 16 of the Leadville Podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like this show, and damn it, you better like this show. This was a good episode. Give us a 5-star rating and a review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, share it with your cycling friends and support our sponsors. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible.
Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch. That's also where you can find a link to our Slack workspace and jump into our ongoing conversation.
That is definitely where the Leadville 100 super nerds go to hang.
Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the 2021 starting line.